St. Anne, Parkland.
Oh, thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you to the member from Lloydminster for bringing this motion forward, this wonderful motion 502, talking about the cultural significance of rodeo. So a lot of folks categorize me, depending on which day, as the rural MLA or the city type MLA, because the constituency abuts. But Madam Speaker, I'll tell you what, rodeo out in our area has been around there forever, and when I was asked to speak on this, I was thrilled, because we've got the likes of Danny Hayes, so a member from Stettler will understand that one. So here's a three-time Canadian rodeo champ, born and raised up in Little Mayerthorpe. Look at that, he's in the Canadian Hall of Fame. When I was growing up, I grew up on the farm, obviously working cattle, but my friends were more into rodeo than I was. At the time, I was into dirt bikes and heavy metal music and all that, and my friends were into the actual rodeoing, but I always loved to go to the dances, because that was good, because you also had the gymkhana and the rodeo at the same time. So hopefully we can talk about gymkhana and the significance too. But my cousin Roy, he got right into bronc busting, so that's what he was doing. He just loved the sport, got right into it, got into a lot of the clinics, started supporting it out in that area out in Wildwood as well. And that would be, well, he's normally sitting behind the member from Yellowhead, West Yellowhead as well. And my friend Clint Bowman, so he suckered me in one time to actually go on. So Clint was the actual full-on cowboy type. And I went to this one event, and Clint was telling me how good it was. I had to borrow a pair of boots because I was wearing high-top sneakers when I went to the event, because, again, it was for the girls, wasn't for the rodeoing. But anyway, my buddy got me into the rodeo. While I'm on the chute here, Clint goes up just before me. Now, here's a guy that's good. He got smeared out and wiped out along the side of the thing. He was maybe being dragged off in an ambulance, some medical things. So when I got on this thing, I thought, well, I can't do worse than that. I didn't make it to the bell. As soon as that thing started going towards the fence, I piled off it like I would on a dirt bike. Never made it to the finish line. But a few years later, I'm out in a project in Vancouver, and well, actually a number of years later. So once I actually had my career, and we end up doing this wrap-up thing. So I did do the mechanical bull. Now, being some of those rhinestone urban cowboy types are out in Vancouver, this little dude goes up strutting there and he jumps on this bull. Well, I couldn't let that down. So we went, and it was 8 seconds, 8 seconds. Finally, they had to put the thing to whoever could ride it the longest. Well, I came in second. I only made it 28 seconds. But I was out dancing with the ladies on the floor, and that little fella, he was sitting in the corner nursing his wounds for a while. Stampede, there was another thing that, you know, the wonderful thing, I was talking about Wichita a little bit before. We had Wichita and New Orleans. There was a couple engineering groups that came up, and we did an engineering review, so up here in Edmonton. And they were starting to get to understand our cultures. So we're doing a small project down in Philadelphia, and the transshipment facility. So these guys come up, we do this engineering review, and they're asking, well, what's Alberta like? Well, come up during the Stampede. We did our engineering review in Edmonton, drove them down to the Stampede. Now this, as folks may recall, that was back in 2012, 13, hell or high water, right? Now if you want to see the fabric of Alberta, that demonstrated it in folds, tenfold if you want, by that means. That whole community came together, massive flood in the area, but that Stampede was going to go on no matter what. And what the folks from Wichita and New Orleans, like, they have Mardi Gras, we got Stampede. Folks understand that persona. Edmonton used to have Klondike Days, it became K-Days, Expo this, Expo that. We kind of lost our way, nobody knows what it is. But rodeo, everybody knows what rodeo is. The other one that kind of came up too, a little connection to our area, there was actually a song written, the rodeo song. I won't regale any of the verses from it, but it was a guy out in our area. So when you've got folks singing specific songs about rodeo and how important it is, no matter how cold it is outside and where you got to go to get to it. So with that, we have tons of tourism. We talked about aviation a little earlier. Business is done at the Calgary Stampede. Business is done at Ponoka. You have this fabric, and you got little kids doing the bronc busting. You got them doing the little sheep where you start out with, and all of the tack-ons that go with it. So again, whether it's First Nations folks, whether it's some of the first African Americans that came up in Canada and started settling here that were phenomenal rodeo stars. I think one of the other members from City Centre had mentioned him before. This has drawn our country together, our province together, and to recognize this as something that binds us, that brings us together, is fantastic. So, without too many more cliches, I would like everyone to cowboy up, vote for this motion, and keep that rodeo strong and free in Alberta for years to come. Thank you.